My wife mocked and tried to humiliate me in front of my friends at restaurants. I didn't stand for it, I said what I thought and left. I got my revenge by making myself respected, but let's take it from the top. The day everything fell apart started like any other. I remember waking up to the smell of coffee brewing downstairs, the familiar aroma wafting through our two-story suburban home. Little did I know that in just a few hours, my entire world would be turned upside down, and I'd be plotting the most satisfying and explosive revenge of my life. I'm Tom Reeves, a 38-year-old software developer with a receding hairline and a growing waistline. Not exactly the picture of a vengeful mastermind, right? But life has a way of pushing even the most mild-mannered of us to our limits. As I stumbled down the stairs, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I saw my wife, Karen, busying herself in the kitchen. She was already dressed for work in one of her power suits, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Morning, honey," I mumbled, reaching for a mug. Karen barely glanced up from her phone. "Oh, you're up. Don't forget we have dinner with the Andersons tonight. Wear something nice for a change, will you?" I bristled at her tone, but bit my tongue. This had become our new normal over the past few months. Her subtle jabs, my silent resentment. But I had no idea how bad things were about to get. "Sure thing," I replied, forcing a smile. "Wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of your friends." She finally looked up, her blue eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? I shrugged, suddenly feeling bold. "Nothing. Just seems like you've been pretty concerned about appearances lately." Karen's perfectly manicured nails tightened around her phone. "Well, someone has to be. You've been letting yourself go, Tom. It's embarrassing." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Sure, I'd put on a few pounds, but embarrassing. I opened my mouth to retort, but she was already grabbing her purse and heading for the door. "Don't be late tonight. And please, for the love of God, wear that blue shirt I bought you. It's the only thing that doesn't make you look like a slob." With that parting shot, she was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen, my coffee forgotten and my mind reeling. Little did I know, this exchange was just the appetizer for the main course of humiliation she had planned for me. The day dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour as I sat in my home office, trying to focus on lines of code that seemed to blur before my eyes. By the time evening rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves, dreading the dinner ahead. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of the blue shirt Karen had insisted I wear. It felt too tight around the middle, a constant reminder of her earlier words. With a deep breath, I headed downstairs to where Karen was waiting impatiently by the door. Finally, she muttered, giving me a once-over. "I suppose that'll have to do. Let's go." The drive to the restaurant was tense, filled with Karen's chatter about work and her friends, punctuated by not-so-subtle criticisms of my appearance and career. By the time we pulled into the parking lot of La Maison, the fanciest French restaurant in town, my hands were clenched so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles had turned white. As we walked in, I spotted Jack and Melissa Anderson already seated at a table. Jack, with his chiseled jaw and expensive watch, stood up to greet us, while Melissa, all perfect teeth and designer dress, waved enthusiastically. "Karen, Tom, so glad you could make it," Jack boomed, clapping me on the back with a force that nearly knocked the wind out of me. We settled into our seats, and I couldn't help but notice how Karen seemed to light up, laughing at Jack's jokes and touching his arm as they talked. I sat there, feeling increasingly invisible as the conversation flowed around me. "So Tom," Melissa finally addressed me, a smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Karen tells us you're still working from home. Must be nice to stay in your pajamas all day, huh?" I forced a chuckle, reaching for my water glass. "Oh, you know, it has its perks. But I do miss." "Tom's been thinking about looking for a new job, actually," Karen interrupted, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Something a bit more ambitious. Right, dear?" I nearly choked on my water. This was news to me. "Ivor." "It's about time," Jack chimed in, swirling his expensive wine. "A man's got to challenge himself, Tom. Can't let life pass you by while you're hiding behind a computer screen. I felt my face growing hot as Karen nodded in agreement. That's exactly what I've been telling him. But you know Tom, always playing it safe. The conversation continued in this vein, with Karen taking every opportunity to paint me as some sort of unmotivated loser. With each backhanded comment and pitying look from our dinner companions, I felt myself shrinking in my seat. But the worst was yet to come. As the waiter cleared our plates and brought out dessert menus, Karen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Oh, how exciting," she exclaimed, turning to Jack and Melissa. "Remember that marketing firm I told you about? They just offered me the VP position." The table erupted in congratulations, and I found myself mumbling along, genuinely happy for her despite the evening's events. But then Karen dropped the bomb that would set my world on fire. "They want me to start right away," she gushed, not even looking in my direction. "It's such an amazing opportunity. Of course, it would mean relocating to New York." The table fell silent for a moment before Melissa spoke up. "But what about Tom? His job?" Karen's laugh was like ice down my spine. "Oh, I'm sure Tom can find something. Maybe it's the push he needs to finally get out of his comfort zone. Right, honey?" All eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The humiliation, the constant belittling, the way she had apparently been planning this move without even discussing it with me, it all came crashing down. I stood up abruptly, my chair screeching against the floor. "You know what, Karen? I think you're right. It's time I got out of my comfort zone." Without another word, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in my wake. As I stepped into the cool night air, my mind was already racing with plans. If Karen wanted to humiliate me, to treat me like I was nothing, then I would show her exactly what I was capable of. Little did she know, her public humiliation had just sown the seeds of my explosive revenge, and I was about to prove that even the quietest, most unassuming person can be pushed too far. As I drove home alone that night, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I knew one thing for certain. Karen had no idea what she'd just unleashed, and by the time I was done, she'd never underestimate me again. I pulled into our driveway, the house looming before me like a mausoleum of our failed marriage. Instead of going inside, I sat in the car, my mind racing. The events of the evening played on repeat in my head, each remembered slight stoking the fire of my anger. My phone buzzed incessantly, missed calls and messages from Karen. I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, electrified by the prospect of taking control of my life. Finally, I stepped out of the car and made my way into the house. Our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. Photos of Karen and me in happier times mocked me from the walls. I couldn't bear to look at them. I headed straight for my home office, booting up my computer. If Karen thought I was just some lazy, unmotivated slob, I was about to prove her spectacularly wrong. You see, while she'd been climbing the corporate ladder and looking down her nose at my work-from-home lifestyle, I'd been quietly building something on the side. For the past 2 years, I'd been developing a revolutionary encryption algorithm. It was my passion project, something I worked on late into the night when Karen thought I was just playing video games. The algorithm had the potential to revolutionize cybersecurity, and I was on the verge of a breakthrough. As I stared at the lines of code on my screen, a plan began to form. Karen wanted to move to New York for her big break. Fine. I'd give her a show she'd never forget. I worked through the night, fueled by a mixture of caffeine and righteous anger. By the time the first rays of sunlight began to peek through the blinds, I had done it. The algorithm was complete, and it was even better than I had hoped. Just as I was saving my work, I heard the front door open. Karen was home. "Tom," her voice called out, a mixture of anger and concern. "Where the hell have you been?" "I've been calling all night." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. As I stepped out of the office, I saw her standing in the hallway, still in her dress from last night, her perfect hair now slightly disheveled. "Hello, Karen," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Have a nice dinner." Her eyes narrowed. "What is wrong with you? How could you embarrass me like that in front of the Andersons? And then you just disappear all night?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Embarrass you? That's rich coming from the woman who spent the entire evening belittling me in front of her friends." Karen had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but she quickly recovered. "I was just trying to motivate you, Tom. You've been stuck in a rut for years. This move to New York could be good for both of us." "Both of us?" I scoffed. "You made that decision without even talking to me. Did you ever stop to think that maybe I had plans of my own?" She looked genuinely surprised. "Plans? What are you talking about?" I smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "You'll see soon enough. I think you'll find I'm not as unmotivated as you seem to think." Karen's expression softened slightly. "Tom, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. But you have to admit, you haven't exactly been ambitious lately. This job offer is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I can't pass it up." "I understand," I said, surprising both of us with my calm tone. "You should take the job, Karen. Go to New York. Chase your dreams." Her eyes widened in shock. "Really? You're okay with this?" I nodded, already turning back towards my office. "Absolutely. In fact, why don't you start packing? I'm sure they'll want you to start as soon as possible." As I closed the door to my office, leaving a stunned Karen in the hallway, I couldn't help but smile. Little did she know, her dream job was about to become a nightmare. Over the next few days, Karen and I moved around each other like ghosts in our own home. She spent her time packing and making excited phone calls about her new position, while I locked myself in my office, putting the final touches on my plan. I had made a few discreet calls of my own, reaching out to contacts in the tech world. Word of my encryption algorithm had spread quickly, and the interest was overwhelming. Tech giants and government agencies alike were clamoring for a piece of what I created. A week after the disastrous dinner, Karen was ready to leave for New York. As we stood in the driveway, her car packed to the brim, I felt a twinge of sadness for what we had lost. But it was quickly overshadowed by my determination. "I guess this is it," Karen said, her voice uncharacteristically small. "Are you sure you won't come with me, Tom? We could make a fresh start." I shook my head. "No, Karen. I think it's best if we both follow our own paths now." She nodded, blinking back tears. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for her. But the wound of her betrayal was too fresh, too deep. As she climbed into her car, I called out, "Oh, and Karen, you might want to keep an eye on the news in the coming weeks. I have a feeling things are about to get interesting." She gave me a puzzled look, but I just waved as she backed out of the driveway. As her car disappeared around the corner, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The game was about to begin. The next morning, I put my plan into action. I had scheduled a press conference at a local tech incubator, inviting journalists from all the major tech publications. As I stood at the podium, dressed in a sharp suit that actually fit me properly, I felt none of the nervousness I had expected. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice strong and clear, "today, I'm here to announce a breakthrough in cybersecurity that will change the face of digital communication as we know it." I launched into an explanation of my algorithm, watching as understanding and excitement took on the faces of the tech journalists in the room. By the time I finished my presentation, the atmosphere was electric. The queue and a session that followed was a blur of technical questions and awed comments. But the real bombshell came at the end. A journalist from TechCrunch raised her hand. "Mr. Reeves, there are rumors that several major tech companies are already vying for the rights to your algorithm. Can you comment on that?" I smiled, thinking of Karen and her dream job in New York. "Actually, I'm pleased to announce that as of this morning, I have accepted an offer from Silicon Dynamics to head their new cybersecurity division. The position comes with a substantial investment in further developing and implementing this technology." The room erupted in excited chatter. Silicon Dynamics was one of the fastest growing tech companies in the world and a direct competitor to the firm Karen had joined in New York. As I stepped away from the podium, my phone was already buzzing with notifications. My name was trending on Twitter, and my inbox was flooded with congratulatory messages and interview requests. But there was one message I was waiting for, and it came later that evening as I sat in my hotel room, sipping champagne and watching the news coverage of my announcement. "What the hell, Tom?" Karen's voice was a mixture of anger and disbelief when I answered her call. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "I tried to, Karen, but you were too busy planning your move to New York and telling everyone how unmotivated I was." But how? When did you even have time to develop something like this? All those nights you thought I was just playing games or wasting time. I was working, creating, something you might have noticed if you bothered to pay attention to anyone but yourself. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Karen spoke again, her voice was small. "Tom, I'm sorry. I had no idea." "No, you didn't," I agreed, my voice free of the bitterness I had carried for so long. "But it's okay, Karen. You've got your fresh start in New York, and I've got mine. I wish you all the best." As I ended the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My revenge wasn't about hurting Karen or proving her wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of greatness, that I didn't need her validation to succeed. The coming weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I moved to Silicon Valley, threw myself into my new role at Silicon Dynamics, and watched as my algorithm began to reshape the cybersecurity landscape. The quiet, unassuming Tom Reeves that Karen had known was gone, replaced by a confident, ambitious man who was making waves in the tech world. Every now and then, I catch a glimpse of Karen on social media or in industry news. She was doing well in her new job, but I could see the flicker of regret in her eyes whenever my name came up in interviews or articles. One day, about 6 months after I'd left our old life behind, I received an email from Karen. It was simple, just a few lines. "Tom, I see now how wrong I was about you, about us. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I'm sorry I couldn't see your potential before. I hope you can forgive me someday. Karen." As I read her words, I felt the last of my anger and resentment melt away. My revenge, if you could call it that, hadn't been about humiliating Karen or proving her wrong. It had been about becoming the person I've always knew I could be, the person she had failed to see. I typed out a quick reply. "Karen, thank you for your email. I hope you're doing well in New York. There's nothing to forgive. We both played a part in how things ended. I'm grateful for the push to become the person I am today. Take care. Tom." As I hit send, I felt a sense of closure. The explosive revenge I had once dreamed of had transformed into something far more powerful, personal growth and success. But life, as I was about to learn, is full of unexpected twists. A few weeks after my exchange with Karen, I found myself in New York for a major tech conference. Silicon Dynamics was unveiling a new product based on my encryption algorithm, and as the face of the project, I was slated to give the keynote speech. The morning of the conference, I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room, adjusting my tie. The man staring back at me was a far cry from the dejected, insecure software developer I'd been just a year ago. I was leaner, more confident, my eyes bright with purpose. As I made my way to the conference center, my phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. "Mr. Reeves, there's been a last-minute change to the speaker lineup. The CEO of Market Force will be giving a presentation right before yours." I froze in my tracks. Market Force was the company Karen had joined in New York, the company she'd left me for, and now, by some twist of fate, we were about to share a stage. For a moment, I considered backing out. The old Tom would have run from this confrontation, but I wasn't that man anymore. I took a deep breath and replied to my assistant. "Thanks for the heads up. No problem at all." The conference hall was packed when I arrived. I could feel the energy in the room, the excitement buzzing through the crowd of tech enthusiasts and industry leaders. As I made my way backstage, I caught snippets of conversation about the Market Force presentation. And then I saw her. Karen was standing near the stage entrance, looking as polished and professional as ever in a sleek black suit. But there was something different about her too. A tension in her shoulders, a nervousness in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Our eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. Then, to my surprise, she smiled and walked over. "Tom," she said, her voice warm but cautious. "It's good to see you." I nodded, finding that I meant it when I replied, "You too, Karen." We stood there awkwardly for a moment before she spoke again. "Listen, Tom, I know things ended badly between us, but I want you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Your work, it's incredible." I felt a lump form in my throat. This wasn't the Karen I'd known, the one who had belittled my ambitions and pushed me aside. This was something new. "Thank you," I managed. "I hear you're doing great things at Market Force too." She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Oh, you know. It's challenging." Before I could respond, a stagehand approached us. "Ms. Reeves, you're on in 2 minutes." Karen's face paled slightly, and I felt a twinge of concern. "Are you okay?" I asked. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just a bit nervous. This presentation, it's a big deal for Market Force. For me. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the lingering affection I still had for the woman I'd once loved. Or maybe it was just human decency. But I found myself reaching out and squeezing her hand. "You've got this, Karen. You've always been amazing at presentations. Just breathe and be yourself." The surprise in her eyes was evident, but so was the gratitude. She squeezed my hand back and nodded. "Thank you, Tom. Really." As she walked onto the stage, head held high, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. But I pushed them aside, focusing on my own upcoming presentation. Karen's speech started strong. She was articulate and engaging, outlining Market Force's vision for the future of digital marketing. But about halfway through, something changed. She stumbled over her words, lost her place in her notes. I could see the panic rising in her eyes. And then, in a moment that would change everything, she froze completely. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. I could see Karen standing there, paralyzed, her career crumbling around her in real time. In that moment, all the hurt and resentment I'd harbored towards her evaporated. I saw not my ex-wife who had humiliated me, but a fellow human being in desperate need of help. Without thinking, I strode onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the stunned audience. "I believe what Ms. Reeves is trying to illustrate is the unpredictable nature of technology and marketing in today's fast-paced digital landscape." Karen's head snapped towards me, her eyes wide with surprise and relief. I continued, weaving her points into a broader discussion about the intersection of cybersecurity and digital marketing. As I spoke, I gently guided Karen to participate, asking her questions and allowing her to regain her footing. By the end of the presentation, what had started as a potential disaster had transformed into an engaging, impromptu panel discussion. The audience was on their feet, applauding enthusiastically. As we left the stage together, Karen turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Tom, I don't know what to say. Why did you do that?" I shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward. It was the right thing to do. We all have moments where we need a little help. She shook her head in disbelief. "After everything I did to you, I don't deserve your kindness." "Karen," I said gently, "what happened between us is in the past. We've both grown. Maybe it's time we both let go of the hurt and move forward." Before she could respond, we were swarmed by conference attendees and reporters, all buzzing about the unexpected collaboration they'd just witnessed. In the chaos, Karen and I were separated, but not before she mouthed a silent "thank you" to me across the crowd. The rest of the conference passed in a blur. My own presentation was well received, but all anyone wanted to talk about was the dynamic between Karen and me on stage. Speculation ran wild about potential collaboration between Silicon Dynamics and Market Force. It wasn't until the closing reception that Karen and I had a moment alone again. We found ourselves on a balcony overlooking the New York skyline, the sounds of the party muffled behind us. I never got a chance to properly thank you, Karen said, her voice soft. What you did up there, it saved my career. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the city lights. You don't need to thank me, Karen. I'm just glad I could help. She was quiet for a moment before speaking again. You know, when I left for New York, I thought I had it all figured out. Big job, big city. I was so sure it would make me happy. But the truth is, I've been miserable. I turned to look at her, surprised by her candor. She continued, her voice thick with emotion. Watching you today, seeing how much you've grown, how confident and kind you've become. It made me realize how much I've lost. Not just you, but myself. I felt a lump forming in my throat. Karen. She held up a hand, stopping me. I'm not saying this to try and win you back, Tom. I know too much has happened between us. I wanted you to know that you've inspired me. To be better. To find my own path, like you did. In that moment, looking at Karen, not as my ex-wife or the woman who had hurt me, but as a person on her own journey, I felt the last pieces of resentment and anger I'd been holding on to dissolve. I'm glad, I said softly. You deserve to be happy, Karen. Truly happy. She smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me of the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. So do you, Tom. And it looks like you found it. We stood there in comfortable silence for a while, two people who had hurt each other, grown apart, but somehow found a way to wish each other well. As the party inside began to wind down, Karen turned to me one last time. So, what happens now? I chuckled. Well, I hear there might be some interest in collaboration between our companies. Her eyes widened. Really? You'd be willing to work with Market Force? With me? I nodded. I think we've both proven that we can put the past behind us and do great things. Besides, your marketing expertise combined with our encryption technology, we could revolutionize secure digital advertising. The excitement in Karen's eyes was palpable. That would be amazing. As we made our way back inside to discuss the potential collaboration with our respective teams, I couldn't help but marvel at the twists and turns life had taken. A year ago, I had been plotting my revenge against the woman who had humiliated me. Now here I was, on the verge of a professional partnership with her. My revenge, it turned out, hadn't been about destroying Karen or proving her wrong. It had been about becoming the best version of myself, about rising above the hurt and finding success on my own terms. And in doing so, I had not only transformed my own life, but had unexpectedly given Karen the push she needed to reevaluate hers. As we stepped back into the reception, the buzz of excitement around us palpable, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting better. And in that moment, surrounded by the fruits of my labor and the promise of a new beginning, I knew that I had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. The story of Tom Reeves, the underestimated software developer turned tech innovator, was just beginning. And this time, it was a story I was writing on my own terms.